But either way, I just found it to be kind of funny. Ryan Noble standing by from CNN. Good morning, Ryan.
You got me now, Bill?
I got you now.
All right, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So the president saying the Mexicans, boy, can they climb. I got to tell you something. We had a conversation earlier this morning, Manaski talking about the fact that we really shouldn't be talking about climbing walls. We should be talking about digging tunnels because that's what the drug cartel is all about. Oh,
Yeah,
we are having a definite issue with your phone. I don't know what it is, but keep going.
Are you on AOL? Did you dial up through AOL? That's what it sounds like.
It does sound like a modem in the background, but
Is this better?
it is
Hear me
better.
all right?
Yeah, better. Yep.
Okay. All right. I think the point with that, Bill, is I think the broader point having to do with that is I think a point to be made that it doesn't matter how high you build the wall until you fix the bigger problems with immigration,
Right.
And the immigration policy in this country, you're not going to stop bad people from trying to get across the border.
Right.
And, you make the point, the president's making the point maybe in a less respectful way that they may be able to climb over a wall. You're making the point they can dig underneath it. There's, a myriad of ways to get stuff around a wall if you want to badly enough.
Yeah.
And what we truly need to fix is the immigration policy that prevents this stuff from happening in the beginning. And it seems as though the president's a lot more concerned about the theatrics of it all than he is necessarily coming up with a cogent policy that can fix it.
I want to ask you about the Tillerson. It does seem that he was informed that at some point he was going to be replaced, maybe some point soon. He was informed on Friday, but did not really speak with the president and learned about his dismissal the same way we did, through Twitter.
What I think is so amazing about this whole story, Bill, is that Donald Trump really became a household name because he would stare people in the eye on a television show and tell them that they were fired. And that was obviously done for television. It was a staged thing. But in reality, when he has the ability and has the responsibility of staring somebody in the eye and telling them they're fired, he doesn't seem to have the guts to do that. And in every one of these situations, he will be talking, he wants to get rid of someone, and instead of bringing them into a room or calling them, he just finds a way to do it that doesn't seem all that courageous. And I think that's exactly what happened with Tillerson.
Boy, I got to tell you, Tillerson came out yesterday with a very emotional press conference. Rachel Sutherland from Fox News, we spoke with her earlier, said she really thought that he was going to cry, never once mentioning the president.
I thought the same exact thing, Bill. And, Rex Tillerson's reputation is this kind of tough guy. He ran one of the most powerful and influential companies in the world, an ExxonMobil. He's a Texan. He's somebody that just you don't expect to see flinch. And, he's not an emotional person in any respect. So I was genuinely shocked at how upset he seemed to be about the way this whole thing came down. He had this perception of being somebody that just kind of let stuff, roll off his back, even when it meant dealing with Donald Trump and the stuff that Donald Trump brings with it. And to see him in that setting with his voice shaking, clearly just thrown off by everything that took place, I just don't think anybody expected it. And I think that's really an accurate way to describe it. I thought at any moment he might cry. He held on. He didn't take any questions, but it was pretty incredible.
And let's be honest, the fact that it was done this way was a slight. This has to be the president saying, okay, this is how I'm going to get back at you. Maybe it was the moron comment. Maybe it's something else that happened. But it did seem like a very... I'm sorry, it was an unpresidential way of getting rid of somebody, it seemed.
Well, the fact that, and our reporting is pretty specific that, he had some inclination that something might be happening. But when push came to shove, the Secretary of State found out that he was out of his job by Twitter. And have we really gotten to this point in our country where that's the way the most powerful representative of our country around the world learns that he's no longer in that job?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And, there's been rumors about Tillerson being pushed out of his job from almost the minute he took office. If you're unhappy with him, this was the pick that Donald Trump made. If you're unhappy, call him into a room and say, listen, for whatever reason, it's not working out. and it's time to step down. And Tillerson probably would have done that and would have done it in a more respectful way. I just think the way that this all played out, it doesn't look good. And, Bill, the bigger story here is that this is probably just the beginning of what's to come. There could be 3, 4, maybe 5 high-level advisors and cabinet members in the Trump administration that could be losing or leaving their jobs in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's this is just the beginning of the bloodbath.
Well, you can't think that Sessions is safe. I mean, I don't know how anybody could think that. He's got to be like packing his stuff and just getting it ready just in case.
Well, the thing about Sessions that's different with everyone else is that Sessions is so intrinsically linked to the Russia investigation,
right?
Which is ironic in that that's what makes the president so angry with him. But if you get rid of Sessions, you've then got to appoint a new attorney general. It's going to have to go through a very difficult confirmation process, of which the number one topic is going to be the Russia investigation.
Yeah.
So I almost think that the president thinks at this point it's better to just leave well enough alone, continue to give Sessions a hard time. And I think the other big difference between Sessions and Rex Tillerson is that Sessions is a Southern gentleman. And even though he may be unhappy with the President of the United States, he's never going to utter those words. You're not going to hear Jeff Sessions calling Donald Trump a moron.
Right. Yeah.
He knows how to play the game, and that may be enough to keep him in the job, at least for the short term.
And listen, this is not a prediction you're making about the bloodbath is not over yet. It's not a prediction. The president previewed it yesterday. When being interviewed yesterday, he said, well, I think we've got our cabinet almost where we want it. There's still going to be a few more changes. I mean, he basically gave us a little preview coming up next on the presidency.
Exactly. The reality show that is the Trump administration. Yeah, that's absolutely right. We could be, I think that H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, is probably on the way out. There's reporting this morning that Ben Carson is in trouble, the HUD secretary, because of this whole mess that he had with his $31,000 redecorating situation. I mean, there are many others. David Shokin, the Veterans Affairs Secretary, is probably in trouble. I mean, the list is long, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. All right. Today, schools around the country are going out. Really, I've heard many different things. Some students seem to be pushing for gun control. Others are simply in solidarity with those students who lost their lives in Florida, and even others are out demonstrating against gun violence. It seems to be a pretty big movement that schools are uncomfortable with, but trying to embrace and do it with some bit of control, it seems.
Yeah, and it's going to happen all around the country, from coast to coast. You're going to see kids walking out of schools. Some schools are going to support it and offer an opportunity for their students to do it. Others are going to say this is not, you're not allowed to do this, because if you start this slippery slope, what are they going to be protesting next, and how's it going to interrupt instruction? I think, though, from the students' perspective, Bill, this is about keeping the conversation going. And the biggest problem that we've seen with the gun control debate is that there is all this attention given in the days following a mass shooting, and then everybody forgets about it. And these students seem pretty hell-bent on not allowing the discussion to end. So this is one stage of it. There's going to be hearings on Capitol Hill this morning. You're going to see students walking out across the country. Then in 2 weeks, there is going to be a major walk here in Washington, where they're going to try and keep that conversation going. Whether or not it leads to any kind of substantive change, I'm still pretty skeptical, as you and I have talked about. I still don't see a huge push here in Washington to get anything done. But I do think the impact of these walks on the local level is that you're going to see state laws change. That already happened in Florida, and I do think that there's going to be a ton of pressure on localities and in state houses to get something done. And maybe that's how it's done, in a piecemeal process around the country, because I just don't see federal law changing in any kind of substantive way anytime soon.
Yeah. And I know here the plan has been to first make sure the schools are secure. They're talking about a resource officer or a retired police officer at every school, which could cost basically $50,000 per building. So it won't be something that's inexpensive, but at the same time, I think schools here are already a bit ahead of the curve. Many schools already have police officers at the door with one point of entry. I think there's things that can be done before any talk of gun legislation is even ends up happening.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that's what you saw with the legislation that was passed in Florida. They do need to harden these schools as targets to make it less easy for someone just to walk in with a gun and start shooting the place up. But there's a bit of me as a young father that is a little concerned about the idea that we're going to be turning these schools into fortresses. That's not what the end game ought to be. The end game ought to be trying to come up with some sort of way to change this culture where it's so easy to get after guns and commit these kind of crimes. That's obviously a much longer-term problem that we've got to address. But I think that, it's all got to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You're not going to solve this problem with one piece of legislation.
Yesterday on the White House website, a list of video games that I guess the White House felt were inappropriate and a cause of these school shootings was put up on the website and then shortly thereafter taken down. Did you hear any of that?
Well, I know that the president met with leaders of the video game industry early, last week sometime. I didn't see the specific story that you're talking about, but I do think that, that's an example of the divide maybe in this thought process where you have, Democrats and liberals who are saying we need to get rid of the guns, we got to address the access to guns, and you have conservatives and Republicans that are saying, well, we need to do more about the culture and what kids are being taught. I mean, it's really two different ways to look at this problem. And again, Bill, it's like we've talked about many times before. It seems as though nobody ever wants to find common ground on these issues. It could be a little bit of both. But unfortunately, both sides are unwilling to look at it that way.
Ryan Nobles from CNN, as always, we appreciate it, Ryan. We'll talk again next week. Have a great day.
Sorry about the phone, guys. No problem. I'll see you.
Thanks so much. Okay.